Now, Professor Awurawa, let me start with you. We have had two guests on this program today. Mr. Femi Falana, SAN, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and also Dr. Dele Ashiru, Chairman of the ASUU branch of the UNILAG branch of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU. I would like to have your take on the two major issues. Femi Falana, SAN, dealing with political and legal issues, and Dr. Dele Ashiru dealing with issues that affect you directly. So I don't know where you want to start from. Maybe you start with your constituency.
Exactly so. I'll start with the ASUU issue. You recall that last week we paid some attention to the ASUU strike and the concerns that many expressed across the country. And fortunately, in the course of the week, some action was taken towards finding a solution to the problem, which is gratifying. Dr. Dele Ashiru spoke well. He highlighted all the issues, the concerns of ASUU over the years, and how ASUU has not been focused only on its own welfare.
Professor Awurawa, please go ahead. Hello, Professor Awurawa. Hello.
Country. You see that the university is the only public
Hello, Professor Awurawa, your line keeps freezing. Okay, please try and sort that out, and we'll come back to you quickly. Let me come to Professor Akintenewa right here in the studio. Professor Akintenewa.
Dr. Ashiru made one good point that I think we really to ponder on. He did say that it is not an issue of appeal, but the issue of action. That, look, when you, Dr. Abati, presented the matter as if the ASUU does not have human feelings, that ASUU simply is very selfish, implying that, look, the students are suffering, but they are only looking at what will benefit them. He now drew our attention to the fact that an agreement was done in May 2021, and that here we are in 2022 May, nothing has happened. So he used this as a rationale to say, look, if for instance an agreement was done a year ago and the government has not been forthcoming, then who is to blame? And in this particular case, he has also, you drew attention to the fact that this problem has been there since 2009. The problem, I said it here one time, Dr. Abati did not even agree with me, believing that probably, one is inciting the public all along. When I made the argument that the only language the federal government of Nigeria understands is strike. You need to push the federal government of Nigeria to the wall before they can sit down to address your issue. So that is the pattern. When you carry out, analysis of the relationship between the labor force in Nigeria and the federal government, you will discover that government of Nigeria is not on record to voluntarily accept, to respond to complaints. No, it's not in its tradition. You can see that the education sector as of today, virtually all the subsectors there, they are on strike. They are asking The Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, for instance, gave indication. And their bitter complaint has always been the inability of the government of Nigeria to accept, to respect an agreement that it voluntarily signs. But you see, I think that if the ASUU is meeting tomorrow with a person like a Professor Agbola Gambari possibly participating, Agbola Gambari is a core academic par excellence. He's a diplomatist as well. As a diplomat, the art of negotiation, academic, his experience as a scholar, can be brought to bear to ensure that an entente cordiale is reached.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Akintenawa, for that commentary on ASUU and the proposed continued negotiations tomorrow. But we now have Yemi Adamalekun. Yemi Adamalekun, if you are with us, I would like you to comment to start with on the issues raised by Femi Falana, SAN, both political and the legal issues. But I know as a campus girl, okay, I use that phrase advisedly. You are a product of the university system. You may also touch on ASUU. Yemi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abati. Don't worry, you're allowed to use it. It's a true statement, so nothing. I'm a proud campus child. So, okay, on the contributions from Mr. Falana, I hope you can hear me.
Clearly, yes.
Fantastic. All right. On the contributions from Mr. Falana, quite a number of things that he touched on. And two things I think are critical that really summarizes this whole issue of sit-down ministers. A valedictory service was held. Mr. President thanked you. You acknowledged the thanks. I don't know how people then after that will then say that, no, we were only joking. We are not yet ready to leave. Number two, on the National Assembly changing its rules, I think it is very critical that that is framed in that particular manner, because primaries have started by INEC's calendar. INEC's calendar was released in February. So we're in the middle of primaries. You now suddenly decide that, oh no, we want other groups of people to participate in the primaries. And you quickly, within 2 days, do an emergency sitting. And Nigerian women have been protesting, engaging, visiting House of Rep members, visiting senators, to get them to convene an extraordinary meeting to revote on bills. They've sent a number of the bills to the state houses of assembly to start the process of amending the constitution. But I think this also just shows when there's political will and a political interest, that the members of the National Assembly can convene emergency meetings if they think it's important for what they want. And women will not stop this, and we will make it a political issue as we go into elections. And then lastly, Godwin Emefiele. My organization and a few other CSOs issued a statement last week speaking to the issue. And I think it's critical that even if Mr. President doesn't have the powers to sack him, he can try a suspension as Mr. Jonathan did with his predecessor, Lamido Sanusi. But I think what's fundamental, and Mr. Falana also raised this point, is that Godwin Emefiele, the central bank governor, has not denied that he's a current member of a political party. The structure of the CBN and the structure of the CBN Act went to great lengths to ensure that it's protected from external interference. I guess they never foresaw that the interference would come from internally at the highest levels, which is also why the president cannot nilly-willy decide to fire the central bank governor. He must take it to Senate. And Senate is not just majority vote. All this to say that it is important that we recognize the critical role that the central bank plays. The central bank stores INEC materials. So we can't have all these structures in place that alludes to directly and indirectly CBN's independence, and then we think it is okay for a governor to be a member of a political party. So even if he decides, as Mr. Falana says, he still has a case in court, but deadline has passed. Even if he decides that he's no longer running for president, he's still a member of a political party. He has done nothing to remove himself. He has done nothing to distance himself. And there must be consequences. Again, but this is a Buhari administration. Fingers crossed that they will do the right thing. But I guess citizens will continue to talk about it and indeed make it a political issue. And lastly, on ASUU, I think for the first time, I would say that I agree with ASUU on the fact that they're not negotiating, so to speak, and that they're not going back with just promises. That promises are not enough. And I think it speaks to the governors how the government is taking this issue when it's still just making promises. What ASUU is saying and continues to say is that we have an agreement. Come to the table and let's discuss this agreement. But I think the fact that students are on the street protesting and now conversation, and that people like us are pushing ASUU that this is not just about your own personal interest, that you have to make this a larger issue, you have to make this a political issue. And if there's any time that ASUU can get in front of the government to actually take it seriously, I dare say that this will be the time as we go into elections. I've said it several times, TED Fund, I still haven't heard ASUU ask for the books of TED Fund to find out how much is actually coming to them rather than operational cost or going into other spending. And Mr. Additional said something that I thought was very interesting, that it continues to becloud the issue, that commercializing/privatizing private or university education in Nigeria means that the poor will be excluded. That's not true. You just need to create structures that allows the poor to be included either through loans or bursaries. And bursaries is not just discretionary, and it's not just bursaries can be defined however you want to define it. So I think vilifying private education, privatizing university education as a way to exclude the poor is completely inaccurate because there are provisions that could be put in place. Secondly, yes, the Constitution says the government should fund education. And yes, we can argue from now to tomorrow what they have money to do or not do. But priority for me will be primary and secondary education, not tertiary education. Yes, we need it for development, but if you don't have good inputs, i.e. primary and secondary, what you produce at tertiary level will be rubbish. So we also need to put our priorities in the right place. And then lastly, I do agree that private universities should not, I believe, have access to TED Fund, even if they were to, not at the same way that public universities have it. So even if it's what they do with interventions, that they can get a loan at a lower rate, but they certainly should not be treated the same way as public universities. And lastly, on this issue of revitalizing and the 200 billion every year, let's not also forget that between 2013 and now, almost a decade, the federal government of Nigeria has set up, I don't know the exact number, but I would say estimate at least 10 new universities. So even though they're not funding the new ones, it'll be interesting to do a study to see how much the federal government has given to the new universities to set up. So instead of giving the old ones 200 billion to revitalize them, he has given the money to new ones, and this haphazard policy of setting up universities as a political tool. But I do agree with ASUU that this is a time that we need to talk about this, and I hope that they stick to their guns and negotiate in a way that's in the best interest of all Nigerians. But again, privatizing university education is certainly not a disadvantage to the poor, not in my view.
Thank you, Yemi Adamalekum. But I have it on good authority that the Emefiele case has been withdrawn. Okay, so if he has withdrawn the case, some of the points that have been made may now become academic because he has taken consequential steps to back down.
Even if the case has been withdrawn, Dr. Abati, I think it's important to note that he's still a member of a political party. So his neutrality has not been addressed. So his desire to run for office, yes, but not his neutrality.
Okay. Now, on that note, let me go quickly to Professor David Awurawa. Professor Awurawa, I hope your internet connection now is very good. Hello, Professor Awurawa. Oh, it's not with us. Okay. Professor Akintenwa, let me come to you for just about 1 minute before we take the next subject.
Yeah, on the issue of the senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana. His submission reminds me of the case of June 12 case, where we talked about annulment of elections, annulment of election results that actually took place. It is not possible to annul a result that has been published. You may disagree with the results, but you cannot annul it. It's exactly what has happened in this case of a minister's resignation. Femi Falana made it clear, crystal clear, that there was a case of fait accompli, that actually there was a case of resignation, either directly being imposed by the president or otherwise. But the mere fact that you were invited to a send-off party, and then you later now say you have not resigned, it is ridiculous. For me, I subscribed to the submission of Femi Falana that please, they have actually been served notice that they are no longer ministers of the Federal Republic. If they are supposed to be, they must go through the new process of, reactualizing their position. As a matter of fact, it's simply because Dr. Ngige, Malami, all these people, they take the people of Nigeria for granted. They take us for granted. Please, we should stop that.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Akintan. While we move on to the next topic, the United Nations Children Fund, UNICEF, the chief of field office in Kano, Rahama Farah, has expressed concern over the prevailing statistics of out-of-school children in Nigeria, saying the country now has 18.5 million out-of-school children. Farah explained that out of that number, more than 10 million were girls, representing about 60%. He lamented that the statistics had worsened gender inequity, whereby only 1 in 4 girls from poor rural families are able to complete junior secondary school education in the country. Farah noted that the attacks on schools and other educational centers in the country were negatively affecting children's quest for education across the nation, noting that more girls were likely to be affected than boys. And of course, the UNICEF representative also noted that most of these affected girls are from the northern part of Nigeria. Yemi Adamolekun, let me come back to you quickly. What are your thoughts on this? 18.5 million children out of school. Before now, it was 10 million. After that, we were told 13.5 million. Now we have 18.5. Most of them from the northern part of the country, perhaps because of insecurity. But there's also the girl-child education crisis nationwide, particularly in the southeastern states.
Even if we take, for example, the context of the Chibok abduction, this is now 8 years ago. One of the fallouts from that were parents choosing not to send their girls to school. And which is even after a lot of another layer, as you rightly said, insecurity that's now layered on it. Now you take the issue of sexual and gender-based violence. And some of the studies, for example, that were shown about why girls don't go to school, because there are no toilet facilities. So when young ladies are on their periods, they choose to stay home because there are no toilets for them to use. And then you take context again, like in the northern part of the country, for Deborah, a girl like Deborah who was killed. Now, there's an overlay of religion in that but there are also people who are looking at it from simply just a function of a young lady who went to school and made a statement that supposedly was blasphemous. But this is an educational institution where I might disagree with you, and we should be able to have a debate about ideas. And if what I say is not palatable to you, then we have a conversation about it. I'm not signing my death warrant. And then you have senior clerics, you have a former presidential aide, both saying that they support the death penalty. in the country. So I think you have multiple reasons why this is the case. What we don't have, we haven't done the census till 2006. So it'll be interesting to see what the percentage of the increase in the number of children out of school is relative to our population increase over the same period of time. But lastly, I also want to tie it to the conversation we just had about ASUU. Again, if we are not prioritizing the quality of children that are going into school at the primary and secondary education level, tertiary becomes a long shot. And so even as ASUU is striking and there's a body to talk about tertiary education, unfortunately, we don't really have a body that's pushing for primary school children to be in school and advocating for what that means in terms of governance outcomes in the country.
Professor Awurawa, are you with us now? Let's see if Professor Awurawa is with us. Okay, we still don't have Professor Awurawa with us, but definitely, as the two of you have said, education is something that we have to address, and the plight of the girl child is very important. You know, the girl child is discriminated against, the boy child is discriminated against, women generally are discriminated against. There is a culture of exclusion that has become predominant in Nigeria that all of us need to be worried about. We take a short break now here on This Day Live, this Sunday talk show. When we return, the conversation will continue. We'll be right back. Well, Professor Awurawa, just before we take our last subject of the day, I understand we now have a strong connection with your laptop. If you could just comment on some of the issues we have raised as briefly as possible so that I can take the last topic of the day.
Thank you very much. I was talking about the ASUU strike before the network problem developed. I said Dr. Ashiru spoke well. He outlined all the important issues that ASUU has been, talking about, and on which agreements have been reached, in the past couple of years. Of course, the inability of government to fulfill its own part of the bargain led to this last strike. But I don't agree with him that the Professor Gambari intervention is a jamboree. Professor Gambari intervention is welcome because in a time of crisis like this, any intervention that can lead to positive results must be welcome. 3 months have passed now since the strike started, and it took over 2 months for even ASUU to be invited for anything, which is not good. So if a multiplicity of issues have now compelled government to begin to take action, and Professor Gambari is leading efforts, he should be commended. And a couple of things so that tomorrow they will know what to focus on. Professor Gambari talked about a couple of things which I'm very happy about. One, he said energy should not be dissipated on issues that are already sorted or resolved. I agree with him entirely about that. And on that, I disagree with the Minister of State who was talking about UTAS, that government cannot, ASUU cannot tell government the platform which they will be paid. That issue is already resolved. It was agreed in 2010, in December 2020, that UTAS will be fine-tuned and utilized. So you should not waste our time on issues that are already agreed on. Focus should be on issues that are still contentious. The missing link in all the good things Professor Gambari did is what has government brought to the table, or what is government bringing to the table. Tomorrow, government should bring something robust to the table in terms of improving university education in Nigeria. I agree with Dr. Ashiru to say that the facilities in university are dilapidated. They are, they don't measure up with what obtains in other parts of the world, and they need to be improved tremendously. We know where we are in the scheme of things, that things are not as good as they used to be economically. 200 billion may not be feasible for revitalization, but government has to do something that, makes sense, so that there can be some improvement in facilities in Nigerian public universities. And of course, renegotiating the 2009 agreement in terms of condition of service for lecturers, that too is long overdue. University lecturers in Nigeria are the lowest paid on planet Earth. And that should not be allowed to be the situation. University lecturer earning less than $700 a month. There is nowhere else on earth. In Ghana, it's about $2,000. What that means that the Ghanaian professor earns about 4 times what the Nigerian professor earns. I mean, that has to be looked into. So government should bring something robust to the table tomorrow so that ASUU can look at it. Our ASUU leadership too has to be reasonable so that we can resolve this issue and open the schools and things can start moving again. That is what I think everybody will do tomorrow. By the way, one final thing about Professor Gavadi's intervention. He said we should not see this problem in the Manichaean sense, that is, you versus us versus them. No, we should see it as a problem all of us are trying to find solution to. So reasonableness should prevail in negotiations tomorrow. I expect that to happen so that this strike can be brought to an end, as quickly as possible. On the political front, well, political times are interesting times. Dramatic things are happening. Ministers who said they had resigned, say they are no longer resigning. Well, I agree with you that the president has the prerogative to, determine who he wants to retain and who he wants to send away. Actually, those who have not sent in letters before now, it's just that we don't have shame. How can somebody that have said bye-bye is coming to say again that, oh, please, I'm not going yet? It also speaks to something, and that is that when the National Assembly that made the law that people who are holding public offices should leave, and that will bring sanity to the electoral system, they are right. Because they are not afraid that out of government, it will be difficult for them to win election. Even Minister for the Attorney General, Minister for Justice, as powerful as he's perceived to be, is chickening out of the governorship of his state. So the president, I think, has the authority prerogative to determine their fate. The CBN governor, we spoke about last. Let me just conclude on that.
Quickly, please. Yeah.
Well, they're happy he's withdrawing now. Let's hope that the president too will determine his fate. He didn't need to do this in the first place. I was saying that who advises these people? How do they think? He's a man who is enjoying his job. We are trying to try and help us so that the economy can be more robust, dollar can improve and all that. He has gone into rise and all. Why go and put yourself in the hot pepper soup of presidency when election?
Hey, Professor Awurawa, these are adults. They have the right to make their own choices. I hope we haven't forgotten that. Yeah.
Ultimately.
Okay, we'll take our final topic of the day. First Lady of Nigeria, Aisha Buhari, has asked the All Progressives Congress, APC, not to sideline women in the contest for tickets for elected positions in 2023. Aisha Buhari spoke on Saturday at a summit for APC female aspirants at the State House Conference Center, Abuja. According to her, the APC wants women interested in the ticket of the party for elective positions are expected to only pay for the expression of interest form, while the nomination is free. Speaking at the summit, the First Lady says she does not believe in free gifts, urging female aspirants to unite, to create an impactful space within the political arena. Yemi Adamalekun, what do you think? Yemi Adamalekun, are you still with us? Hello?
Sorry. I do agree with Mrs. Buhari for women and for young people. So while it's meant to be we don't want to exclude you, but you've set the bar high enough that you then need to make an exception for them so they can actually participate. And then you throw it in their face during primaries because you say we didn't charge you or we've allowed you to contest for free. Why are you then proving quote unquote difficult? So I think even in a manner of speaking, it's a difficult place to be because women do want to participate and women don't have access to the type of financial capital that men do. So it's a delicate balance between wanting to be taken seriously and being at the table with equity and also being able to participate in the process. Some political parties haven't done that. They've kept it low enough that everybody, whoever, I think it's a party like AAC, for example, their forms are free. I think another party, their forms are the same. It doesn't matter where you're coming from, PRP. So I think that's what we need to look at. And if EFCC, as Mr. Falana said, is truly investigating, then it would be interesting to see how this comes out in the sources of the large amounts of money. But quickly wanted to say something on Mr. Awurawo's point around Professor Gambari saying that we should see working together to find a solution to a problem. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. The government hasn't shown itself to be someone or an entity that's honoring agreements and wants this to move forward. So I think it's a bit disingenuous for Professor Gambari to approach it in that manner when that hasn't been the experience from the government side.
Okay, thank you very much, Yemi Adamalekun. Professor Akintenwa, very quickly.
I think a free nomination form cannot be aimed at sidelining women. The mere fact that people are encouraged, women are encouraged, facilitates, encourage their interest to take forms. That means they want them to be involved. The issue now is that how many of the women are readily available applying? How many of them are able to travel around to seek delegated votes? This is where the issue is. I think that so far, I like the idea of giving free nomination forms to encourage them. They are mothers. They are now to take advantage of these free nomination forms rather than asking political parties not to sideline them. If the women do not want to be sidelined, they are to take the decision themselves and act along that line.
Well, Professor Awurawo, you have the final word on this. We have just a minute to sign out. Hello, Professor.
Okay. I agree with Yemi that, yes, thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, clearly. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with Yemi that ideally the forms should not be that expensive. I mean, there is a consensus across the country on that. The forms shouldn't be that expensive. It ought to have been low enough for young people who want to contest, women and everybody else who is interested, to be able to, obtain the form. But since they haven't done that, the concession for women to, not to pay the same amount as men are paying, and of course, some concession for youths too, I think is welcome because it will enable more, more women to be able to, obtain the nomination form and then, indicate their interest. So what we can only do is to continue to encourage them, support them, that we need them to be part of the political process. I mean, half of the population, the number of them who have shown interest is too small. We need more of them, to be part of it. And finally, I want to also say that we need more women to support women. Because as it has been argued, if more women support women, we'll have more women in political offices.
Well, thank you very much, Professor David Awurawo. Thank you, Yemi Adamalekun, and thank you, Professor Akintenwa, right here sitting beside me. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next week. Thank you.